Imagine waking up and being completely convinced that everyone around you, your mother, your best friend, even your own reflection, has been secretly replaced by an identical imposter. You're getting Capgras delusion, a rare psychiatric condition where the brain's facial recognition system disconnects from the emotional response that normally accompanies it. You can see the face perfectly, you know it looks right, but the emotional click of familiarity never fires, so your brain concludes the only logical explanation: this must be a fake. It's most often linked to brain injury, dementia, or schizophrenia, and in some documented cases, patients had become violent toward loved ones they were convinced were imposters. Estimates suggest it affects less than 4% of people with psychosis, making the full-blown condition exceptionally rare on its own. Now, flip that delusion inside out. Instead of thinking others are fake, you become convinced that you yourself don't exist. This is Cotard's delusion, sometimes called walking corpse syndrome. People with this condition genuinely believe they are dead, decomposing, or that their internal organs have vanished entirely. Some stop eating because they believe a dead body doesn't need food, which can make the condition fatal if untreated. It typically develops after severe depression or neurological damage disrupts the brain regions responsible for processing emotion and self-recognition, leaving sufferers alive, aware, and utterly convinced otherwise. Fewer than 200 cases have ever been formally documented in medical literature. Moving on, imagine falling in love with the Eiffel Tower. Not admiring it, but forming a genuine, romantic, and sometimes physical relationship with it. Objectophilia, or object sexuality, is a condition where individuals form deep emotional and romantic attachments to inanimate objects. One of the most well-known cases involved a woman who legally married the Berlin Wall. Researchers believe it may be connected to a form of synesthesia, where sensory and emotional wiring crosses in unusual ways, allowing an object to trigger genuine feelings of intimacy and connection. It remains so rare that it isn't even formally classified in most diagnostic manuals. This next one turns eating into something involuntary and dangerous. Sleep-related eating disorder causes people to get up during sleep, walk to the kitchen, and consume food entirely unconscious of doing it. Unlike simple sleepwalking, the eating is often compulsive and reckless. Patients have been known to eat raw meat, frozen food, or even non-food items like cleaning products, waking up with no memory of the episode at all, except crumbs in the bed and weight gain they can't explain. It's thought to be linked to disrupted transitions between deep sleep and wakefulness, and it affects roughly 1 to 5% of the population, though severe cases are far rarer. Now imagine believing a part of your own body doesn't belong to you. Somatoparaphrenia is a rare condition, usually following a stroke affecting the right side of the brain, where a person becomes convinced that one of their limbs, often the left arm, belongs to someone else entirely. Patients have been recorded insisting the arm attached to their own shoulder belongs to a doctor, a relative, or a total stranger, sometimes trying to throw it out of the hospital bed. The right hemisphere of the brain normally maintains a map of body ownership, and when that region is damaged, the sense of "this is mine" simply fails to attach to the limb, even though the visual and physical connection is undeniable. This one turns strangers into family. Fregoli delusion is the belief that different people you encounter are actually the same person in disguise, changing appearance to follow and monitor you. A person with Fregoli might insist the mail carrier, a coworker, and a random person on the street are all the same individual wearing different faces. It's thought to stem from a similar disconnect as Capgras, but reversed. Instead of familiar faces feeling unfamiliar, unfamiliar faces feel disturbingly familiar. It's most associated with schizophrenia and brain lesions, and documented cases remain in the low hundreds worldwide. Next, imagine your own voice in your head literally not feeling like yours. In alien hand syndrome, a person's hand moves, grabs objects, or even acts against their own wishes, and they insist it isn't under their control. One documented patient's hand tried to unbutton her shirt in public while her other hand fought to stop it. It typically results from damage to the corpus callosum, the bridge connecting the brain's two hemispheres, causing one hemisphere to issue motor commands that the conscious, language-producing hemisphere never approved and doesn't recognize as its own. It remains one of the rarest neurological conditions on record, with only a small number of confirmed cases globally. This next disorder makes an entire category of stimuli genuinely repulsive. Trypophobia, the intense fear or disgust triggered by clusters of small holes, like a lotus seed pod or honeycomb, isn't officially classified as a clinical phobia yet, but researchers studying it found something surprising. The aversion may be an evolved response, since the pattern of clustered holes visually resembles the skin markings of venomous animals and disease. What looks like an irrational reaction might actually be ancient survival wiring misfiring in the modern world. Then there's a condition that erases the ability to recognize faces altogether, including your own. Prosopagnosia, or face blindness, prevents people from distinguishing one face from another, sometimes so severely that patients can't recognize their spouse, children, or reflection without relying on other cues like voice, hairstyle, or clothing. Severe congenital cases are estimated to affect about 2% of the population, but the most extreme forms, where even one's own face in a mirror looks like a stranger's, are dramatically rarer and can be socially devastating. Finally, imagine being unable to stop counting, checking, or repeating an action. Not out of habit, but because your brain convinces you something catastrophic will happen if you don't. Severe obsessive-compulsive disorder can escalate into what's sometimes called pure O, where compulsions are entirely internal. Repetitive mental rituals, intrusive, violent, or taboo thoughts, and constant checking for reassurance that never actually arrives. Unlike the common stereotype of hand-washing, this form is invisible from the outside, which is part of why it's so often misdiagnosed or missed entirely, leaving people trapped in mental loops for years before receiving a correct diagnosis. Each of these conditions shows just how fragile the line is between the brain that builds your reality and the reality you assume is objective and shared. A single disconnect in recognition, ownership, or self-awareness is enough to make the most familiar things in your life feel like something else entirely. Which one of these disorders would disturb you the most? Let me know in the comments.